Greetings, LEGO and D&D nerds. My name is Ian, and I, just like the rest of the LEGO D&D community, am completely obsessed with the LEGO Dungeons & Dragons CMF figures that came out in September. So far, I've collected 2 full sets and a few extras of a couple of characters, but much like LEGO Ariel here, I want more. I really hope that with the popularity of this CMF and the LEGO Ideas set that came out, we get to see a Series 2 of more D&D minifigures. But also, I don't want to wait that long, so I've designed my own. Arrayed before me here on top of Volo's Guide to Monsters are 12 figures that I have made, all of which I would love to see in a Series 2 D&D CMF. So I'm going to go through them one by one, show you how I made them, and talk about what I would like to see from another series in the future. Since Series 1 focused mostly on playable races and classes with a few named lore characters and a mind flayer thrown in there, I really think that a second series should focus on enemies. So for this series, I've designed 12 creatures that are humanoid enough to be represented as minifigs that I think would make an excellent second CMF series. I've included 2 named characters, a handful of the lower level, more minion-y type creatures, and a couple higher level monsters. All of these creatures are going to come from these 2 books, the 5th edition Monsters Manual and Volo's Guide to Monsters, and I challenged myself when building these guys to only use official LEGO pieces, no extra paper add-ons like I like to sometimes do, and no figure modification whatsoever. These are all built using official LEGO elements and no illegal building techniques that I'm aware of. So let's take a look at each of these figures and how I built them. Let's start with our first named character. I wanted to include at least 1 or 2 in this series since Series 1 also had named characters with the Lady of Pain and Zastam and Strahd and Tasha. So the first one that I've gone with is the wizard Morton Kindan, and I decided to go with him because he is the canonical author of Morton Kindan's Tome of Foes and Morton Kindan's Monsters of the Multiverse. So since I was doing an enemies themed build, he seemed like he might be a good expert to include. The image on the cover of Morton Kindan's Tome of Foes isn't great of him, so I'll throw this image here for reference that I based his look off of. I've given him this spell book, and his double-bladed sword is made from an Inquisitor's lightsaber hilt with 2 gold studs on it to get the gold element in there, and then 2 of these long knife blades. If we see him in a future CMF, I would love to see this sword hilt in its own molded piece that really gets the 3 loops in there, or at least see a pearl gold version of this Inquisitor hilt to make his sword. His torso is Doctor Strange with some white arms, and his legs are from Newt Scamander, which gives us that same blue tailcoat coming down. I've given him this blue cape, which I believe is from the Falcon Knight Archer, that has this sort of wraparound part on the front, and his head is from an old Indiana Jones set. The only problem I have with it is it doesn't really have enough of a goatee to give Morton Kindan. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how he came out. I don't know that I'll have a use for this figure in my campaign, but I wanted to have at least 1 or 2 named characters, so he was my first one that I went with. My second named character from lore is the Archlich VCna. This character was a little bit trickier to build than I thought he was going to be. I wanted to use one of the skeletal torsos, but I didn't have it in the light gray color. I only had a dark gray, and as many times as I tried, I just couldn't make that work the way I wanted it. So I ended up getting a little crazy with the design here. I don't think that this is anything along the lines of what we would actually see in a CMF, but if we do get a CMF VCna, I would love to see a skeleton torso with some custom gold printing on it to kind of give that ornate look that he has going. I also don't have the new VCna Eve of Ruin, so I'm going to throw up a reference image here of some modern VCna art. I've taken the bottom skirt piece from an old evil wizard that I also think was from one of the early CMF series. I put a dark red jumper on it and a clip to adapt to this light gray droid torso. I've gone with a Drax the Destroyer head for him, but I did also toy around with Darth Vader, and that looked pretty good too. And this crown piece is from the Snow White Evil Queen, and it's kind of optional. He doesn't have a crown in all the art, but sometimes he does, and it's kind of spiky, so I tried this on for size, but I think I'll leave it off for going over the rest of this figure. I would love to see a custom VCna crown if we did get a CMF figure. I've gone for a light gray color scheme to match the sort of light gray bones that you see in the art, but I've also wanted to gild it with gold. So I added this gold messenger bag to kind of get a swash going on here, and I've spread the arms out wider from the sides of the body by taking these studs that have a bar on them, and I've attached them to a minifig hand, which I then slid over the post to give me a little spacer for the arms here, because when they were directly on the droid body, he looked far too narrow and skinny-eyed. This might have pushed him in the opposite direction, and now maybe he's a little bit bulky, but I think that's better than the alternative. The head is actually connected in a very similar way. I have a gray minifig hand that I have placed the armor over top of, and then connected the Drax head to before sliding it into a clip so that I can connect it to the droid body. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this figure came out. I do think I can make a much more accurate figure if I was using some modification techniques in painting, which I will probably do in the future. But for now, I am content with this VCna. For our first lower level minion-esque creature, I have made a LEGO Bugbear. Bugbears are a classic creature as seen here in the monster manual, and we can compare my figure to the art here that I used for reference. This head and torso are from the Marvel CMF Werewolf by Night, and these ears are Lord of the Rings Goblin ears. They happen to match the dark tan that is kind of the secondary color on the Werewolf by Night torso, and these legs are also from Lord of the Rings, but again, that dark tan sort of matches the secondary color that we have going, and also matches the art pretty well. I've given him this spiky shoulder armor and sort of this skirt piece, but I would of course love to see some better printing on the legs to give this sort of armored appearance that we see if we had an actual CMF Bugbear. His mace is just brick built by attaching 4 of these black pyramids to a snot brick and giving it a handle. The next figure I have made is a Diva, one of the celestial angels of the D&D multiverse. This is the only one that is a medium creature, so he worked out for the CMF, and he's described as having silvery skin and golden hair and wings. So I used this metallic silver Ninjago face and this Ron Weasley hair from the golden Harry Potter figures that were coming out with the sets. This torso is from King Triton in the Ariel Big Seashell set, and I've just added silver arms and gray hands to it. These are the new wings from the Aarakocra figure in the CMF, and some plain gold legs, and his mace is actually made with a really old Harry Potter piece. This was a potion that came in like one of the original runs, like the early 2000s runs. I think it really kind of gives this ornate boxy mace end, and it would be cool to see a piece like this make a comeback. Next up, we have Adorar, the Underdark Dwarves. This guy is pretty simple. He's just wearing some chainmail with some short gray legs, and I've given him Emperor Palpatine's face and Professor Flitwick's beard with a little hammer made from a headlight brick and a black cheese slope. Not too much going on here, no shoulder armor to speak of just because the beard was a little wonky to play with, but I think this is a really solid Duragard character, and if you wanted a whole bunch of these, there are several different gray heads you could use. There's several versions. The Emperor, you've got your Darth Vader. There's a good amount in this sort of pale gray skin tone that could work for a Duragar. Next up, we're going to take a look at a LEGO Null. Now, I built this guy using the new Aarakocra legs to get this sort of digitigrade leg going, and since they're white, I had to go for a white fur scheme, and that led me to this Chima head that I had, which I think is maybe supposed to be a saber-toothed tiger, but is giving the right appearance for a Null. He's just got some simple Viking armor, and I replaced the leg joint piece on the Aarakocra legs with green instead of this sort of orangish tan, just because I thought it matched better. This isn't the most accurate to the art. I do think it gives the appearance of a Null and would be relatively easy to put together a pack of, but if we have an actual CMF Null, I would love to see some more custom printed legs like this. I love these legs and they're so versatile, so I'd love to see them in more colors, maybe a gray, like the art here, and a new head mold that's sort of in the Chima style, but gives a little bit more hyena and a little less wolf or tiger would be really cool to see. Now, I'm pretty happy with this design, but it isn't my favorite. I have a much better design of a brick-built Null that I much prefer and would use if I needed it in my campaign. And I showcased how to build these guys in my first ever video on the channel. The link will be in the cards. this guy is a little bit taller, but he's got some more detail and he's a little bit more imposing. So overall, I do prefer the brick-built version, but a Null is a medium creature, so that is a good option to have an actual minifigure of. So if we get a CMF, it would be nice to see a lot of low-level cannon fodder creatures like this that you can build a pack of Nulls and throw at your party. A mere 2 pages later, we have the infamous Goblin. So this is the figure that I have created for a D&D Goblin. I've gone for a dark tan because that is what this arc shows, even though I think most people associate goblins with the color green. The D&D art, for some reason, has this weird thing about creatures that everyone agrees should be green, not being green. Like the goblins and the orcs being gray. Like, I'm not sure what's up with that, but I decided to keep true to the art and make a dark tan goblin. So this is a goblin face from the Lord of the Rings series, and the torso is also from that goblin. But the hair is actually Namor's hair from the Black Panther set. I've given him the medium legs so that I could have a different colored centerpiece to sort of give the loincloth look, and I added another skirt. But in a CMF, I would love to see some either dual molded short legs or custom printed medium legs on a goblin like this. I also gave him a silver arm here to sort of give this armored arm look, and the mace is just a long bone with 2 clips on it to form a club head. Up next, we have a night hag. I wanted to throw in one of the hags, and the night hag is one of my favorite designs. She was a little tricky to work with, but this is what I came up with, and I am pretty happy with it. I have taken this long purple tailcoat piece from the Joker, and I've used it as a cape. Even though it's a tailcoat that's meant to attach at the waist, I just attached it at the neck to kind of give a more flowing robe look. This face is the swamp monster face from Scooby-Doo, which is why it has a human face at the back. And then I've given her Jack Sparrow hair, which unfortunately does not have the horns that we see in the Night Hag art. If I was doing a modified figure of this, I would definitely try to incorporate some horns into this hairpiece. I think that would really tie it together. And I've also taken one of the Lord of the Rings One Ring pieces, and I've slipped it onto her arm in between the hand and the arm piece to kind of show some of the jewelry she's wearing. I think that's a really cool look, and I wanted to add that in. And then I've just given her one of these little shootable energy bursts to show that she's got some magic. I'm really happy with how this figure came out. I was struggling with her for a while, mainly when I was trying to represent the color of her robes here with the dark red elements. Once I switched to purple, it really came together. I would prefer her skin be a little bit darker purple too, rather than this light lavender, but really this lavender color is kind of the best you can do for LEGO purple skin. There's not a lot in the darker colors, but there is more of this lavender, so that's what I had to go with. Up next is one of my favorite creatures, the Kua Whip, just a weird little fish guy. Now, this is possibly an interesting design for the Kua Whip, but it's the one that I used when I ran Kua Whip in my actual campaign. This headpiece is an old Space Police headpiece, and I think it really looks similar to the Kua Whip here. It's a different color scheme, obviously. We're not purple, we're going for a more blue here, but I like the way that the face sits on the body, and I think it looks very fishy, so it makes for a good Kua Whip piece. I just gave him a simple kind of peasant's body, and then these legs that had a printed apron on them to kind of complete his outfit, and I gave him the Warlock's new knife and this sort of anchor staff I made with this cool silver piece just attached to one of these studs with a bar. His weapons are kind of meant to imitate more what the Kua Whip here is holding. See, we have this sort of claw thing and a hooked knife, even though I based his outfit more on the one on the previous page, but I didn't want to leave him empty-handed, and I'm pretty happy with how this figure came together. The next creature that I have made is the Rakasa, which is a fiend that looks basically just like a humanoid tiger. I had this tiger printed Chima head, so I was able to really pull this guy's look together. He's got a newer Ninjago torso that's kind of giving this wrapped robe look, and I gave him Mysterio's legs, which have the dark green, but also some of the gold and purple gilding going on. I've brick built him a little pipe, just with a minifig hand and some stud pieces that he can hold and look like he's smoking his pipe. and I've given him just a standard blue cape. I've never paid much mind to the Rakasa as a creature, but he seems kind of interesting, so maybe he'll find his way into my campaign at some point. For the last two, we're going to be breaking out Volo's Guide to Monsters, and the penultimate creature in this series is the Woodw. When I saw the art for this guy, I knew that this tree trunk hat piece was literally perfect. So I have given him Groot's body, even though you don't really see the torso, and some brown legs, and then I've taken this hollow log hat and put it on top, which gives us exactly what we see here, two golden yellow eyes staring out of a dark knothole in the wood. This specific head is from one of the new Dream sets, but a Jawa head would also work for the same effect. For his wooden club, I've just taken one of these twig pieces and attached it to one of these handles, and for the sort of shield that's growing out of his arm, I took a cylinder that had the hole all the way through, and I attached it to one of these studs with a bar so that he could hold it at an angle. I added some cheese slopes to the top of the log just to give the sort of broken effect we've got going on here, and since this guy is covered with moss and flowers, I also attached to the twigs a couple of pink flowers that I have used the sand green minifig hands in order to attach. That way we see some moss and also some flowers. And now I've saved my favorite for last, the Cobalt. I have based this guy off of the art of the Cobalt inventor in Volo's Guide to Monsters, just because I love Cobalt and I wanted to go over the top with this guy. The figure itself is pretty simple. It's just this red bare-chested torso, which might have come from a Nexo Knights figure, I'm not 100% certain, and the red Dragonborn head with red arms and red hands and some short minifigure legs. I went with dark brown ones here to make it look like he was actually wearing some pants. I do have some red ones, but that just wasn't giving the right look at all. I would love to see some nice dual molded or printed legs that give us the look of the sort of loose loincloth and utility belt, but the bare legs beneath. I gave him a messenger bag to get a strap going across his shoulder, and his scorpion tied to a stick staff is made from a Lego scorpion with a stud on the bottom that has a hole through it so I can attach the handle with one of these bar clips at the base and a tooth to kind of give this sort of hooked look that he's got going on here. I've used one of the translucent back braces with two studs to be able to attach a skunk in a cage, which turned out really, really cool. I used two of these pieces in brown that have the 3 clip attachment points but are fanned out at an angle, and then I used these dark brown droid arms to make the cage on top. The skunk is sitting on some headlight bricks that are sandwiched in between them, and that all connects to the back brace there. I've also connected the tail to the bottom of the cage since I'm using this sort of red claw piece for the Cobalt's tail. I've used one of these special 2x2 plates that has studs on one side and tile on the other so that I can connect it to the bottom of the headlight pieces and give my tail a mounting point on the base here. But there is also this official dragon tail piece that does come in red, so that would make a great Cobalt tail. I just only have the green one, and since I wanted to build his skunk cage anyway, I just decided might as well attach the tail to the bottom. I think a Cobalt is maybe what I would like to see the most out of a Series 2 of D&D CMF figures, just because I love them so much. If we did get one, I don't think this tail is the perfect piece. I'd like to see maybe the Tyrannosaurus tail in red, something a little more nimble and a little less chunky. And I also would rather them not use the Dragonborn head mold. I'd like to see Kobolds get their own, maybe something a little bit smaller, even though this does work. At least some unique face printing would be cool to see. When I army built Kobolds for my campaign a while back, I didn't have any of the Dragonborn heads, so I actually made my own custom Kobold heads using a resin cast of the LEGO Bosk head, which I used some unicorn horns that I snipped and glued on, and then I painted these up, and so these are my Kobold heads. They're not my favorite just because they're a little atrociously ugly, and I like my Kobolds to be a bit cuter, but I think the proportions to the body works a bit better than the Dragonborn head does. But overall, I was super happy with how this Kobold character came out in order to round out my CMF Series 2. So that is my very own custom D&D Minifig CMF series. I really hope you liked these builds, and let me know if you decide to try them out for yourself. I really hope that we get an official Series 2 CMF, and maybe even a Series 3. I would love to see LEGO and D&D continue this collaboration and not just have it be a 2-off with the collaboration set and the CMF this year for the 50th. I think it's just such a natural fit that they should keep that license theme going. And I think CMFs is a great way to do that because people can buy them and use them as minis. And if that's your intent, I think enemies is definitely the way to go for the second series. But that's all I've got for today. Let me know down in the comments below which of these creatures is your favorite, what LEGO D&D collaborations you'd like to see moving forward, and if you have any suggestions for what creatures I should build in my Brick Bestiary series, drop those down in the comments below too. Thank you so much for watching.